I've been living here for about 2.5 years now, and not being from here, my pros and cons list has changed. So I'm going to share with you my recent pros and cons list that consists of 5 pros and 5 cons. So stay tuned. Hi, my name is Kristen Brown, and I'm a realtor with eXp Realty. If this is your first time to my channel and you want to know everything there is to know about the Triad area of North Carolina, go ahead and tap on that subscribe button and tap on the notification bell. That way you are notified the next time that I make a video. And if you'd like to know about something specifically and I don't have a video about it, go ahead and put it in the comments below, and I'll be sure to put out a video about that particular subject. If you are thinking about moving anywhere in the Greensboro, Winston-Salem, or High Point area, make sure that you give me a call, send me a text, or shoot me an email. I got you covered when moving to the Triad area of North Carolina. So let's get to that pros and cons list. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is perception. Everybody's perception is a little bit different as we're bringing in our own background knowledge and our own experiences into something. So some of my pros and some of my cons you may not agree with, and that's totally okay. What someone thinks is really good, someone else might think is really bad, and vice versa. So I put this list together based on general knowledge and what clients who have relocated to the area have told me. So coming up, I will be as objective as possible with the pros and cons list. And if you totally disagree with something that is either a pro or con, go ahead and put it in the comments below. So let's go ahead and start with the pros. Number 1 pro is things to do. In the Winston-Salem area, there are lots of things to do. There's exercise, for example, where you can go hiking at Pilot Mountain or go hiking over at Hanging Rock. Both of those are not too far of a drive. But if you're not able to get out and go hiking in the mountains, there are a lot of walking trails or trails through the woods at various parks throughout Winston-Salem. For example, there's Salem Park, and Salem Park is about 7 miles long. It goes all the way around Salem Lake, which is a reservoir. We like to go over there quite a bit because it doesn't take us that long to get there. And our dog Alex really likes that structure where we have this lake that we're walking around with this dirt trail. When we've gone to Pilot Mountain before, Pilot Mountain has various trails that can be kind of strenuous. And being that he's an older dog, he's going to be 15 in a couple months, we hope, that sort of hike is a little bit too strenuous for him. One other thing that you can do in the Winston-Salem area is wine tasting. There are several wine vineyards around the area. It's called the Yadkin River or Yadkin Valley wineries, and it has like a little map that you can go and do all these different wine tastings. In fact, there's one winery that's not too far away from our house. It's about a 5-minute drive. And sometimes on Sundays, we like to go over there, and they have live music that's playing, and we do a wine tasting. We decide on which bottle that we would like to have, and then we can just sit out in an Adirondack chair and listen to live music. Another thing that you can do in Winston-Salem is explore some of the history of the city. There's the Ronalda House, which is a little bit north of downtown, and this house had belonged to R.J. Reynolds, and it was quite the fancy house back in the day, so to speak. They've made it into a museum. There's also some hiking trails around Reynalda House, and it can be a really nice afternoon, get out and get some fresh air. And then right by Reynalda House is a little village where they have some restaurants and shops. Another place you could go check out is the Old Salem Museum and Gardens. Old Salem is when the settlers had come in the late 1700s into this like little village, and they've tried to either restore it or replicate what was there before. The people who work there are dressed in period detail clothing, and you can get some history lessons and also walk around the museum. It's kind of like an outdoor live museum, and that's a pretty cool thing to do too. In downtown Winston-Salem, there's lots of shopping as well as restaurants to check out. And I'll put a link for you in the first comment that will be pinned below. That is a nice source that has a shopping map, so you can see what that looks like from block to block. If wine is not really your thing, there are a few breweries in downtown Winston-Salem. There's one that I went to a few weeks ago with my teammates called the Incendiary Brewery. That was pretty cool. They had this really large outdoor space where you could get whatever beer. They also had wine too, but you could get whatever beer you desired and go out and sit outside in what was used to be the old coal pit. So way back when, in this coal pit, I guess that's what they used to feed the smokestack for the tobacco that was across the street. And one thing that's really cool about the Incendiary is they have this live train track where there's still cargo trains that go by. And that's what you're looking at right now. One other thing you can go do is check out North Carolina barbecue. Some people like it and some don't. It just depends on your style. So you could go do a little taste test and see what you think. My number 2 pro is the weather. Now, some people might disagree. Again, it depends on what that perception is. But the weather here is overall pretty mild. We do have 4 seasons here. It does get cold every now and then. It also does get hot and it does get humid. But I would say it's not going to be as humid as it would be like down in South Florida, for example. Also with snow, it's very rare that we would get like a ton of snow, like a big amount that would need to be plowed. Is it possible that it may happen one of these days? Yeah, it is possible. It just depends on what the cycle is. But since I've been here, I've only seen maybe about a 1/4 inch of snow, and it's usually melted by the afternoon. Prior to living in the Winston-Salem area, I lived in Greenville, South Carolina, and the weather was basically the same there. And in those 8 years, it pretty much the same thing. It would only snow like maybe a 1/4 of an inch or an inch. And not a really big deal. Just depends, again, on your perception of where you're coming from. You might think, oh, wow, that's a ton of snow. But if you're from somewhere up north, like New York, or from Massachusetts, New England, or maybe out in like Colorado or something, you'd be like, that's no snow at all. You know, that's just a dusting. And usually what happens is people kind of panic and they run to the grocery stores. They have to get their milk and their bread. And then school is usually canceled as well. Number 3 is affordability. Winston-Salem came up as the 2nd most affordable U.S. metro area, according to bizjournals.com. And I'll put the source in the comment below as well. So it really just depends on where in Winston-Salem that you want to relocate to. And when you call me, we would do a deep dive into this particular topic. I would ask you some questions like what your lifestyle is like and what it is that you are comfortable to afford for a home. Number 4 for my list of pros is the proximity. Where we are located on the eastern seaboard, I think, is pretty sweet. We are halfway to Florida and halfway up to Boston. My husband still works for the same firm in Boston that he worked for before we moved here. So if we ever needed to jump in the car, or he ever needed to jump in the car, it's about an 11.5-hour drive. My mom lives down in Naples, Florida. So if we ever had to jump in the car and drive down to see her, then that's another 11.5-hour drive. So we're like right in between the two. Also with the mountains, they're about an 1.5 to 2 hours or more west of here. It just depends on where you want to go into the mountains. For example, we went to Boone for a day trip. It took us about an hour and 40 minutes to get there. We left in the morning. We did a really nice hike there, had some lunch, and we were home by 5 o'clock. Also with the beach, depending where it is that you want to go along the eastern seaboard, we have tons of beaches here in North Carolina. Recently, we went down to Wilmington. It was about a 3-hour and 20-minute drive. We stayed in Airbnb, and we brought my dog Alex and my mother-in-law's dog Hannah with us, and we just had a great time. It was really nice just to hop in the car. We didn't have any tolls to go through. The roads were pretty smooth. Highway was pretty smooth. And it was just really nice to go down to Wilmington for the weekend, get some fresh seafood, and just check out a different part of North Carolina. My number 5 is nice people. Now, some people might disagree with that, but again, it just depends on perception. Overall, I feel the people here are very polite and very nice. One thing I'm still trying to get used to is that everybody says yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. And I just have to kind of take a deep breath and not react to that because that's just part of the culture here, which is cool. It's nice. It's polite. And that's just something that I'm not used to and that I'm still getting used to. People still hold doors for each other. And also there really hasn't been any kind of road rage. That's not to say that it can happen, because of course road rage can happen, but it's not your typical road rage like you'd see up in the Northeast, for example. Don't even bother putting your blinker on up north, right? Because no one's going to let you in. Everyone's just going to keep whizzing by. Here, it actually works. You put your blinker on, you start to move over a little bit, whichever way you're going, either changing lanes to the right or left, and someone will actually let you in. So, and people wave, and so that's really nice. And then also when we take Alex, our dog, to Tanglewood Park, we're just walking along and don't really know who these people are. They're walking towards us and everyone says, hello, good morning. Hey, how you doing? So overall, the people here are very nice. Now let's get to that list of cons. Our number one con is restaurants. And the reason I say restaurants is because we haven't been able to find any restaurant that's dedicated to being gluten-free or being a vegetarian restaurant. And these are two things that I have in my family. My husband is gluten-free. He can't eat any gluten. And it's not to say we can't go to a restaurant and order something that's gluten-free, because we can, but we just haven't been able to find a 100% gluten-free restaurant. So that way you just walk in, you open up the menu, and you just know everything on that menu is gluten-free, and you don't have to search for that little GF. Same with vegetarian. You can get vegetarian meals, but there's no restaurant here that's a dedicated vegetarian restaurant. So maybe as time goes on, that will change. And the other thing with restaurants here that I've heard from clients who have moved here from elsewhere is that there's not as much flavor in the food that they're used to. So that's just something that you have to kind of spec out for yourself. And you might think the food's really delicious, and others might think, wow, that's just really bland. It just really doesn't have a flavor to it. There's a new restaurant opening, a Vietnamese restaurant in Winston-Salem called What the Pho, or What the Pho, I guess is how you say pho, P-H-O. And we're really excited to try that. My number two con is parks. There are a lot of parks here in Winston-Salem or the Winston-Salem area. The issue is that the trails aren't as long as I would like them to be. And also I haven't seen any that are connected from one to the other. So for example, in Greenville, South Carolina, they have something called the Swamp Rabbit Trail. And it used to be an old railroad trail, or not trail, but an old railroad that they then turned into a trail. So you can either bike or walk or whatever, push the stroller, whatever mode of transportation that you want on that particular trail. And it's a really long trail. I think when they'll be finished with it, I think it's like around 25 miles. So the longest trail that I've seen in Winston-Salem is at Salem Park or Salem Lake. And that's a 7-mile trail that goes around the lake. Number three con is the airport. There's PTI Greensboro, which is in Greensboro, pretty convenient to get to. The issue that I have with it is that the nonstop flights that they have don't go to the destination that I want to go to. That being said, however, we're only about an hour from the Charlotte airport and about an hour and a half from Raleigh. So therefore I can shop for flights and see which airline is offering a better rate out of whichever airport. And some people are pretty psyched about the Greensboro airport because it does have a nonstop flight to wherever they're going. I just haven't found that for me yet. So for example, if I wanted to fly up to Boston as of what's today, January 1st, 2023, there is not a nonstop flight to Boston. I'd have to connect in Washington, D.C., and then go from Washington, D.C. to Logan. So that's a little bit of a pain. Number three on the list is style of homes. And the style of homes here are mainly a colonial style home. You have your 2-story regular colonial, you have split levels, you have ranches. In the historic districts of Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, Lexington, you'll see like the Mediterranean and Greek Revival Victorian homes. But one thing that seems to be few and far between are mid-century modern homes as well as just modern homes. And not that that's a bad thing, but if that's something that you're truly searching for and where you want to have a mid-century modern, like a true mid-century modern in Winston-Salem, it's going to be really, really hard to find that. Just there's just not that many that exist anymore, and they're hardly ever for sale. And number 5 on the list is we don't have any pro football or basketball teams in Winston-Salem. So if you're a big pro football fan, our closest would be in Charlotte, which is the Panthers. But college basketball and high school and college football is really, really huge here. For basketball, we're not too far away from Duke University. It's about a 2-hour drive, and you can check out or go to a pro game in Charlotte. So that wraps it up for my pros and cons of Winston-Salem. Feel free to make a comment below about what your pro is or your con is. If you have any questions, please give me a call, send me a text, or shoot me an email. I got you covered when moving to the Triad area of North Carolina. Until next time.